shining bright of you. Night breezes seem to whisper, I love you. Birds singing in a sycamore tree. Dream a little dream of me. Say nighty night and kiss me. Just hold me tight and tell me you miss me. While in your dreams, whatever they be, dream a little dream of me. Stars fading, but I linger on you, still craving your kiss. I'm longing to linger till down there. Just
This is the same as what's in here. It's just the details for taking this up. Hi, good. How are you? Good afternoon. Good afternoon. We are so happy to welcome you here. Special welcome from Pax Christi's Catholic Nonviolence Initiative. We are so happy that you could join us this afternoon. Those who are here in person, you can't hear us, okay? Is that better? All right, I'll start again. Good afternoon and a warm welcome to all of you who are here in person. We are delighted to see you. Welcome from Pax Christi's Catholic Nonviolence Initiative. We also are welcoming maybe 250 friends from around the world, and we're delighted that you're joining us as well. We are happy today to have an opportunity with you to inaugurate our Catholic Institute for Nonviolence, as Pax Christi International honors the Parent Circle Family Forum. We'll begin with a brief prayer.
We are gathered here to pray in blessing, in gratitude, and asking for guidance for the Parents Circle Family Forum of Palestine and Israel, and the new Catholic Institute for Nonviolence. Let us pray in solidarity that our God will make these two experiences instruments of nonviolence and just peace. God of life, make us instruments of your peace. May we be your loving presence in the midst of people suffering grief from the loss of loved ones, the devastation of their lands, and destruction of cultural heritage. Help us to be supportive and sustain one another in the context of these heartbreaking realities, by being attentive listeners to the pain suffered, the shattered dreams, and the severance of irreplaceable bonds.
Where there is hatred, let us sow love. May we find common ground by embracing our vulnerabilities. In solidarity, let us move from the oppression of hatred to sow compassionate, healing ways. Help us to move in love, to provide critical places and resources for learning and nurturing ways to cope with life's painful challenges. Where there is injury, pardon. May we move beyond vengeance toward those who have hurt us to a type of pardon that encourages us to create a better future. Help us to realize that God is on this journey with members of different religious faiths. Let us look at the witnesses in our lives who show us that a life-giving future is possible.
Where there is doubt, faith. May we move past disillusionment and find solace in the faith life of believers and in the synodal process of nonviolent communication to hear the needs of the people. Help those who accompany people in their struggle for a life of just peace. Help us all to be faithful peace builders. Where there is despair, hope. May those despairing from the grief of heart-rending personal losses and unrealized potential be strengthened by compassionate conversations to create a more hopeful place of peace. Help us to reach out in prayer and sustained, respectful efforts to offer services that value the dignity of the human person. During this season of creation, we declare our intentions to hope and act with creation.
Where there is darkness, light. May those accompanying families and those who feel embedded in the dark night of the soul be enabled to move through the challenges and pain to a deeper sense of life in the path of life, light. Help those who associate with the Catholic Institute for Nonviolence to deepen our understanding of and commitment to nonviolence at a personal, interpersonal, and social structural level. And where there is sadness, joy. On this World Day of Migrants and Refugees, may we remember that God walks with migrant people. All of us are migrants. Help us walk together with the most vulnerable, with God, finding ways to welcome migrants and refugees, promotes their well-being, and integrate them into our communities as we join in global unity to support those who are displaced.
May we accompany one another to our journeys as we explore ways to interconnect the goodness of our different faiths and provide the resources that help one another to be transformed in love, to be understood as to understand. May we be receptive listeners, responding to and being attentive to the experiences of others. Let us reach out with the ears of the heart.
تقبل مسؤولياتنا الجماعية لاحتضان مستقبل يمكن أن تتحقق فيه الأحلام وتكون فيه كل جماعة الأرض في أمان. ساعدنا يا الله بمحبتك وإرشادك لنجد طرقا واقعية لتحقيق مستقبل مليء بالرحمة والسلام والعدالة والاستدامة، لأنه في العطاء نلتقي. عسى أن نفهم هذا السر في الحياة الذي نعرف أنه صحيح. عسى أن ندرك أهمية العطاء للآخرين بأي طرق ممكنة. ساعدنا يا الله على إدراك أهمية الإيماءات الصغيرة من ابتسامات وأياد مساعدة وآذان صاغية يمكن أن تدعم إحساسا بالراحة والطمأنينة في أنفسنا وفي الآخرين. أحيانا في هذه الإيماءات يتولد إحساسا بالسلام الداخلي.
It's in pardoning that we are pardoned. May we be graced to enter the dynamic of a merciful God who is encouraging reconciliation and restoration of right relationships. Help us to respond to the small grievances in our lives and to major conflicts before they turn violent, seeking in dialogue pathways to reconciliation and just peace. And it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. From the dying too common in our broken world, help us, God of love, to reclaim hope, hope which speaks to us of something deeply rooted in every human heart, independent of our circumstances and historical conditioning. May we who yearn for deep peace, built on truth, justice, and reconciliation, nurture a worldwide conversation to nonviolence and what Laudato Si calls civilization of love. Amen.
Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for. No religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer,
But I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will be this one. Thank you, Lorenzo. Good afternoon to everybody. I'm very happy to welcome you all on behalf of Pax Christi International. I'm Marta Inés Romero, Secretary General. And I was informing that for those who speak Spanish only, there would be Laura there, and those who need interpretation to French, it is Ricardo there. So please move on that. And for those who has not have the pieces for the interpretation to Italian, please go outside with Julia, with your identity card, please. So it has not been Bishop Ricuti, so once he arrives here, there will be a special message from Pope Francis to this institute. A particular welcome to several members of the Advisory Committee Council of our new Catholic Institute for Nonviolence, who are with us this afternoon. It is Cardinal Tomasi, Cardinal Bow, Cardinal McEnroe, Sister Patricia Murray, Maria Stefan, Friar Michael Lasky, Deacon Nate Bacon, and Archbishop Bicuti, who will arrive anytime, hopefully. We are particularly grateful today for the religious communities who have made the launch of this institute possible by their generosity, and I will name them. The Sisters of St. Francis of Clinton, Iowa. The Maryknoll Sisters, the Wheaton Franciscan Sisters, the Franciscan Friars of the Province of Our Lady of Guadalupe, the Brothers of the Christian School, the Missionary Society of San Columban, US. Pax Christi International has been committed to nonviolence since our founding 80 years ago. Even in context of egregious violence and war, we have witnessed around the world a deep commitment to gospel nonviolence and effective, creative nonviolent practices, especially in the peripheries. The Parent Circle Family Forum, we will honor today. Here it is Salwa and Bassam. Unfortunately, Yuval couldn't arrive because of many uncertain circumstances. So today it is a powerful example of active nonviolence. For the past 8 years, through our Catholic Nonviolence Initiative, in conference here in Rome and elsewhere, in global virtual roundtables, webinars, Catholic universities with religious congregations in dioceses and local communities, we have engaged with grassroots practitioners of nonviolence. Theologians, social scientists, and other scholars and church leaders in a rich conversation about the possibility of moving the world from a paradigm of perpetual violence to a paradigm of active nonviolence. Nonviolence is at the heart of the gospel. It is a spirituality, a way of life, a broad array of tools for preventing or interrupting violence, for protecting the vulnerable, and for promoting just and sustainable peace. It is potentially a global ethic, and it has been proven effective in many situations. It desperately needs more investment and research. I invite you to see a short video.
When Jesus taught us to love our enemies, put down our sword, and become peacemakers, he called us to pursue a bold new way of life, rejecting violence and living non-violently with one another. Non-violence is the way God wants us to live, and the Gospels are filled with many ways to do so. Non-violence is at the core of Christianity. Non-violence is a way of being that transforms conflict, disarms violence, makes peace, and builds a more just world. It is more effective than violence. It says no to violence and yes to the humanity of our opponent. It defeats injustice, not people. Non-violence taps the power of respectful dialogue, peaceful struggle, and non-violent action, a power that is critical to the survival of our common home and to achieving the common good. In a world of violence, injustice, and oppression, the Church is increasingly heeding the call of the Gospel to turn from the path of violence and instead to embark on the way of creative nonviolence. The Catholic Church is called to be a world leader for nonviolence and to bring Jesus' nonviolence to every dimension of the life of the Church. Nonviolence is the power of love in action, resisting and disarming violence, promoting human dignity, fostering reconciliation, justice, and peace through non-violent means. It has 4 dimensions. It is the way of reconciliation, courage, empathy, solidarity, and humility rooted in the life of the God of peace and non-violence. It includes daily care for community respect, constructive communication, inclusivity, participation, and interconnectedness. It is a spectrum of effective, cross-cutting approaches for preventing or ending violence, transforming conflict, protecting human and earth communities, and nurturing a more just and peaceful world. Nonviolence is based on the interconnectedness of all that exists. It has the power to transform and heal the world because this foundational unity is even deeper than the systems and structures of violence, injustice, and oppression that dominate our lives and our world. Pope Francis has consistently called the Church and the world to rediscover Jesus' nonviolence. His Holiness has provided hope to people everywhere by addressing the most serious challenges facing the world, by denouncing violence in its many forms, and by shedding light on non-violent pathways to a more just and peaceful future. At a time when our planet is facing what Pope Francis has called a third world war being fought piecemeal, the Church can unleash the unconditional non-violence of Jesus through formation, education, preaching, and pastoral care in parishes, dioceses, schools, universities, and ministries around the world.
We are increasingly convinced that the institutional Catholic Church, with its tremendous capacity for education and formation, could help move the world toward that new violent paradigm we so desperately need. The mission of the Catholic Institute for Nonviolence is to make nonviolence research, resources, and experience more accessible to Catholic Church leaders, faith organizations, and networks in order to deepen Catholic understanding of and commitment to the practice of gospel nonviolence. During the Synod, gathering on each Friday in October, we will offer lunchtime seminars here at the Istituto Maria Bambina, here, where the question about nonviolence included in the Synod synthesis document last year will be discussed by nonviolence scholars and practitioners with deep experience. We hope you will join us for some of all or all of the seminars, and flyers are available in the entrance. So now it is time to introduce our special panelists. It is my honor now to introduce to you Cardinal Charles Maung Bo, a Salesian of Saint John Bosco, is Archbishop of Rangoon, Myanmar, and President of the Federation of the Asian Bishops' Conference. Myanmar has been at war since the military coup of the 2nd of February 2029. Last year, 21, yeah. Last year, during the Synod, gathering Cardinal Bo issued a strong statement in support of Pope Francis' constant call for active nonviolence, saying that the violence and trauma being experienced by the people of Myanmar and by so many others around the world, quotations, underscore the critical need for humanity to make a dramatic shift from a global paradigm of war and violence to a paradigm of just peace and nonviolence. Thanks, Cardinal Bo. Then Cardinal Robert McElroy, Bishop of San Diego, California, in the US. Cardinal McElroy served in parishes in the Archdiocese of San Francisco for more than 20 years and has been the Bishop of San Diego for 9 years. He holds a doctorate in moral theology from the Gregorian University and a doctorate in international relations from Stanford. He has written extensively on issues pertaining to Catholic social teaching, and especially on the need to move nonviolence to the center of Catholic through war and peace. Thanks, Cardinal McElroy. Our sister, Teresia Wamuyu Washira, IBBM co-president of Pax Christi International. Wamuyu is a Kenyan and member of the Institute of the Blessed Virgin Mary. She attained her PhD in Peace Studies on experiences of violence in schools in Kenya from the University of Bradford, and a master's degree in Applied Theology, Peace and Justice Studies from Middlesex University. She has been a teacher and principal in Loreto schools in Kenya and has specialized in peace and nonviolence trainings for youth and religious sisters in East Africa. Currently, Wamuyu is a senior lecturer and program leader of the Peace and Conflict Studies at St. Paul University in Nairobi, Kenya. Dr. Maria Stefan, whose groundbreaking empirical research with Erika Chenoweth from Harvard on nonviolence in the 20th century has contributed greatly to our understanding of the effectiveness of strategic nonviolence. Maria is presently co-lead and chief organizer with the Horizons Project, where she works to build a just, inclusive, and peaceful democracy in the US. Previously, she was a director of the program on nonviolent actions at the United States Institute of Peace. So thanks, Wamuyu, thanks, Maria, for coming here. And before starting the panel, I would invite Bishop Ricciuti, our president of Pax Christi Italia, who will arrive, buonasera, benvenuto, who will arrive with a letter from Pope Francis. Please come here. No, it's in Italian.
In italiano. Leggo in italiano.
Leggo in italiano.
Leggo in italiano. Il presidente internazionale Excellence. Bene, buonasera. Leggo, chiedo scusa del ritardo, ma purtroppo il traffico c'è un po'. Sono ambasciatore di un messaggio del Papa Francesco per questa occasione. Ne do lettura. Segreteria di Stato, a Sua Eccellenza Reverendissima Monsignor Giovanni Ricciuti, Arcivescovo Vescovo Emerito di Altamura Gravina, qui delle Fonti, Presidente Pax Christi Italia. In occasione della presentazione del nuovo Istituto Cattolico per la non violenza, promosso da Pax Christi International, il Sommo Pontefice, vivamente compiaciuto per la lodevole iniziativa, rivolge un cordiale pensiero, auspicando che l'evento susciti in quanti vi prenderanno parte una rinnovata adesione ai valori della pace e della fraternità. Sua Santità esorta pertanto a operare insieme per garantire la difesa dei diritti di ogni creatura umana e divenire artefici di una società fondata sulla giustizia e sull'amore reciproco, considerando la non violenza come stile di una politica di pace. Che siano la carità e la non violenza a guidare il modo in cui ci trattiamo gli uni gli altri, nei rapporti interpersonali, in quelli sociali e in quelli internazionali. Messaggio per la 50ª giornata mondiale della pace, 1 gennaio 2017. Con tali sentimenti, Papa Francesco, mentre invoca la materna protezione della Vergine Maria, volentieri invita ai presenti la desiderata benedizione apostolica. Cardinale Pietro Parolin, segretario di Stato di Sua Santità, dal Vaticano, 29 settembre 2024.
Grazie mille. Grazie mille. Ya, per favore. Grazie mille, Monsignor Ricchiuti. So let's continue with the presentation of the panel. Later on. Okay. 4? It's him. Okay. Let's continue with the panel. So the idea, per favore. Gracias, Monsignor. So Maria will introduce the conversation, contribute her own initial thoughts, and facilitate an important conversation on the centrality of nonviolence to the gospel and how the new institute can support the role of the church in promoting the global shift to nonviolence that we believe it is so necessary.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Marta, for that great introduction and overview. And thank you, Father, for reading the statement from Pope Francis. My French allowed me to understand good parts of that statement. And I'm so grateful for all that Pope Francis has done to center active nonviolence and just peace in the teachings of the church and the actions of the church. So thank you for reaffirming that commitment today. It is really an honor for me to be speaking on this panel, in particular with people who really are walking the talk when it comes to living out the ethic of nonviolence and the practice of nonviolence and nonviolent action in their daily lives. And they're working so tirelessly to transform violence and injustice in their countries. And so it's an honor to be with you all today. And I also just want to express deep appreciation to Pax Christi International for being so steadfast and persistent and working so hard for so many years to get us to this moment today, this important milestone in a global Catholic movement to advance nonviolence and just peace, and to be inaugurating a new institute for nonviolence. You know, I attended the early gathering that the Vatican and Pax Christi hosted in 2016 together with my mom, Marianne. We had a follow-up meeting in 2019. There have been many meetings. There have been books written. I'm seeing friends from Germany who hosted a whole tour on nonviolence and just peace in their countries. So this has been such a long progression. And we know that, like, it takes so much to sustain movements. And Pax Christi has been doing this on a very tiny budget, but with so much spiritual power. And so thank you so much for all that you have done to get us to this point, Pax Christi. And I just would say, I think we're really in an urgent Kairos moment for the church and for the world. We heard the stories of violence and war around the world, the terrible wars raging in Myanmar, in Sudan, in Israel-Palestine, in Ukraine and elsewhere. We're also facing 18 years of rising authoritarianism and declining democracy around the world. We're facing closing civic space around the world where journalists are being attacked for doing their jobs. Peaceful protesters are being violently repressed. We have attacks on higher education, telling teachers what they can and cannot teach and what books are being banned and taken off the shelves. So we're seeing cracks in the nuclear disarmament infrastructure. So for all of these reasons, we need a universal church with global reach to actively, creatively, and robustly invest in alternatives to war and violence, both because it's morally and ethically the right thing to do, but also because it makes practical strategic sense. And I'll return to the practical strategic elements of nonviolence and nonviolent action in a moment. But I first want to invite a conversation with our panelists. We're going to invite our three distinguished, eminent panelists to share from their experiences and talk with us today about why gospel nonviolence is critically important now, and what is the role of the church in shifting the paradigm, and what is the potential contribution of this great new Catholic Institute for Nonviolence. So I'm going to turn first to Cardinal Bo, coming from a country, Myanmar, that has been facing now terrible violence and civil war, but also has a long history of powerful nonviolent action and activism. You have described, Cardinal Bo, nonviolence as a spiritual practice, as a way of life, and as a strategy for systemic change. So please share why you think it's critical in this moment for this new Institute for Nonviolence, Catholic Institute for Nonviolence, to be baptized into being.
Dear Cardinals, Bishops, Monsignor, dear sister, brothers, friends, good evening. Today is a moment of grace, filled with hope and vision for the future. With the inauguration of the Catholic Institute for Nonviolence, we take a bold and a significant step in our journey toward a world of peace. At this very moment, I believe Jesus, the Prince of Peace, smiles upon us from the heavens. He who preached reconciliation, peace, and love from his humble birth to his glorious resurrection. Alongside him, I can imagine the great apostles of peace, Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr., urging us to march forward with courage toward the promised land where every brother and sister lives in dignity, peace, and prosperity. But our gathering today is not merely symbolic. It is born of the cries of the oppressed, the tears of the broken, and the unspeakable suffering of millions. We meet at a time when the world is fraught with violence and conflict. The suffering of the people of Israel and Palestine, the anguish of our country, Myanmar, the devastating of Ukraine, and the countless other tragedies we witness remind us that humanity stands at a crossroads. We are called to pause and reflect. Can we continue on this destructive path? Or must we as one human family make a profound shift from a paradigm of war and violence to one of peace and non-violence? Can we afford to continue waging war against one another and against nature itself without ultimately destroying ourselves? The time has come for us to embrace peace as the common religion of all humanity and to adopt non-violence as our way of life. True non-violence, as Jesus demonstrated, is not the absence of conflict, nor it a passive submission. It is an active and powerful force rooted in love, truth, and the very gospel itself. Jesus' rejection of violence was not a weakness. He proclaimed that the love is stronger than hate, that peace endures longer than war, and that justice, when built on the foundation of nonviolence, is unshakable. As he told us in the Beatitudes, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God, Matthew 5:9. It is this same message that Mahatma Gandhi echoed when he declared, "Non-violence is not for cowards. It is for those with courage." He warned that an eye for an eye leaves the entire world blind. Yet today, much of humanity remains blind, consumed by the idolatry of violence, the false belief that power lies in domination, force, and destruction. But as Jesus showed us, true power lies in love, mercy, and forgiveness. The marginalized communities have shown how peace can be achieved across communities through love and mutual respect. The world needs to learn from marginalized and oppressed communities how they magnificently put the common good as their choice in the pursuit of happiness. Pope Francis, our modern-day prophet of peace, continues to remind us that violence is never a solution. Through his many exaltations and teachings, he calls us to embrace nonviolence, not merely as a strategy, but as a way of life, a radical shift in how we perceive and respond to conflict. He challenges the idolatry of violence, exposing it for what it truly is, a lie that dehumanizes us all. Violence breeds more violence, while love builds and sustains life. Non-violence requires us to unlearn deeply ingrained beliefs, those destructive notions that violence is necessary or inevitable. We must strip away these falsehoods. Instead, learn and practice our true identity as non-violent beings made in the image of a loving and peaceful God. This is not an easy task. It demands an reimagining of the world where conflicts are resolved not with force, but with dialogue, as we have heard also, where injustice is not ignored, but confronted with love, and where peace is achieved not through arms, but through understanding and mutual respect. Non-violence is not just a spiritual path, it is also a practical, powerful strategy for systematic change. It mobilizes people to rise against the structures of oppression, racism, and injustice that have plagued our societies for far too long. It empowers the marginalized to stand up, reclaim their dignity, and fight for justice without perpetuating the cycle of violence. Non-violence is the true path to a just and peaceful world. As the Church, we are called to deepen our commitment to gospel non-violence. This may not merely be an ideal, but a central teaching embedded in the Catechism of the Catholic Church. It should offer us a clear, robust understanding of non-violence as both a moral principle and a practical ethic for transforming our fractured world. Imagine the global impact of such a commitment. The world would see the Church as a beacon of peace, inspiring a global embrace of nonviolence that could heal nations, reconcile enemies, and rebuild societies on the foundation of justice, mercy, and love. The establishment of Catholic Institute for Nonviolence marks a significant milestone in our journey. This institute will help us reclaim the nonviolence of Jesus, drawing from the wisdom of theological reflection and practical strategies for addressing violence. And most importantly, the lived experiences of marginalized communities who embody this radical call to peace. It is from these communities that we learn the true meaning of gospel-centered nonviolence. Peace and reconciliation are not merely ideals. They are the very roadmaps for our survival as a human species. Pope Francis, in his great documents, The Joy of the Gospel, Laudato Si' and Fratelli Tutti, charts this roadmap for us. The joy of the gospel calls us to reconciliation with our Creator. Laudato Si' reminds us of our need to reconcile with nature. And Fratelli Tutti urges us to reconcile with one another. These three pillars of peace and reconciliation are our last hope. Through them, we'll see the dawn of a new era of nonviolence emerge, a dawn that will save the world. Dear friends, brothers, sisters, let us recommit ourselves to this sacred path of nonviolence. Let us be the peacemakers, the ones who reject the allure of violence and embrace the transformative power of love. Together, we can bring about a world where justice flows like a river, where peace is not a distant dream, but a living reality, and where every child of God can walk in harmony, free from fear and oppression. May this new institute become a beacon of hope, lighting the way for humanity to embark on a new venture of existence grounded in peace, justice, and love. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cardinal Bo, for those profound words. Yes, let us build a world where justice flows like the river. And it just makes me reflect on this work on active nonviolence. I think it was Pope John VI who said, if you want peace, work for justice. And you're hearing just profound, important statements on the role of active nonviolence in not only stopping violence and war, but in actively achieving human rights, justice, challenging racism, challenging white supremacy, all of the drivers of violence and violent conflict. So I appreciate you emphasizing that, Cardinal Bo, and referring to nonviolence as a roadmap for survival. We're next going to turn to Sister Wamuyu from Kenya, as you heard in the introduction. Sister Wamuyu has been doing such remarkable work, both in teaching students, in training students, in focusing on peace journalism, alternative mediation. And Sister Wamuyu has said that the Catholic Institute for Nonviolence will be a gift to the larger church and the Vatican by illuminating practices and the potential of nonviolence in Africa and around the world. So Sister Wamuyu, tell us about that.
Thank you, Maria, for that. I would like you to relax where you are and come on this journey with me, the journey of walking the path of nonviolence. This journey began not as an adult, but I learned this journey from my parents. My father, John, and my mother, Lydia, were both nonviolent peacemakers. They lived peace, and so they modeled peace for me in the way they interacted with each other as a married couple and the way they brought us up as children. I remember my mother and father had what they called quality time, 1 hour. And in that 1 hour, they used to pray together and also resolve their day-to-day conflicts. We didn't get to know what they were resolving, but we saw it in practice. And so from there, my mother also used to send us every Saturday to visit an old person in the neighborhood. She would pack some food. We would be sent there to clean the house for that person, to make their beds, if they needed to take a bath, we helped. And we made sure that old person was comfortable. Okay, at the time I didn't know what this was about. And of course, we used to get very angry. Why should we be spending our day on a Saturday or Sunday taking care of an elderly person? So we thought it was crazy. However, as time grew, now I can see what my mother was teaching us. The other thing my mother told us was, before you welcome anybody at the gate, before you open that gate, open your heart. Now, I thought, when I look back, that was profound. It meant that you are not choosing who should come into your house, but your heart is open for everybody. And is in that the base of what nonviolence is, welcoming all, even the enemy. From there, I had the privilege of going to the best schools in my country, Kenya, the Loreto School. And in a Loreto School, we were taught to be nonviolent people, to value everybody. In other schools, there was bullying taking place, but in a Loreto School, we were not allowed to bully. The older girls would take care of the young ones coming in, making them feel at home. At the time, of course, I didn't understand this, but now I can see what the sisters were teaching us is to embrace everybody, to love everybody, and to have a home. And we were also taught freedom, justice, sincerity, and all these are values of nonviolence. At the time, we wondered, why should we be so different from other schools? Other schools you are not taught all these things. So why does the Loreto sister think that we should be different from other schools? We're not engaging in fights, not, making the first-year students know who we are, the big people who have been in the school. So we were learning these things. And of course, I moved forward from there. I got to the university and I began to get shocked. When we were being taught, I was in the literature class. We were being taught about women in literature, women talking about their experiences. And I remember one story that shocked me was us discussing about the gender violence in the classroom. And the men in the class were kind of saying that it's okay to batter your wife. It's okay to batter a woman because our culture teaches that when you beat a woman, some of the cultures teach that when you beat a woman or you batter her, you love her. And I was shocked, and I was wondering, how can that be? How can hate and love have a home? And I remember having an argument, and the men were so strong. And from that time, I said, I need to do something. And that's when I went to England, and I enrolled in an institute that was doing peace and conflict studies. And there I found two Pax Christi members, that is Valerie and Pat Gaffney. And I joined Pax Christi as a student, and here I am from that experience. Now, I would like to share more about what that has meant for me as a person. And especially now that I'm in an institute, in a university, where I am in charge of peace and conflict studies, and trying to pass on what I received as a child in school, and also what challenged me at the university. One thing I try to do with the students is to pass on what was modeled to me, to make these students question certain norms, especially that violence can be acceptable, that violence can be a way of life, that violence, especially in the culture and structure, can be acceptable. In most of the African culture, there is, and I think in other cultures, but I can only talk about mainly my own culture, where I was brought up. Structural and cultural violence can become a norm that in the end, it's used as an initiation practice. For instance, in most of African culture, we have the initiation ceremony for girls and also for boys, what we call the circumcision. Circumcision may be okay for boys, but may not be so okay for women. It is a violence. But because it's wired in the structure, most girls in my country, some communities, they go through what we call the female, I know they use the word genital mutilation in the medical world and in the academia. However, in the culture is called circumcision. It's a rite of passage. And that rite of passage, if we don't address that by using a non-violent way, then we could perpetuate violence against women. And so what we have done in Kenya is we have opened an institute as Loreto Sisters to address that gender violence by bringing in girls, teaching them what the culture was doing, to be women in the society, but we remove the word, the cat. The girls come and learn how to live with each other. They learn the value of harmony, peace, justice. However, we also teach them they should not accept violence as a norm. So finally, we are engaging in training sisters, and the sisters we train then go and train young people in active nonviolence. And during these trainings, we have trained so many sisters, about 86 sisters we have trained, but they have multiplied that training and trained about 9,000 young people in active nonviolence. And I'll just share two. I can share many stories when we meet over a cup of tea. But there are two stories I would like to share. One was from my own student who felt that the only way to deal with violence, he's from Sudan, was to carry a gun. And during the class teaching, we were chatting, and he told me, what are you talking about, nonviolence? How can I see somebody attack me and my parents and not attack back? So I told him, I'm sorry, I can't tell you not to use the gun. I cannot tell you not to protect yourself. However, I would like you to go and think about it. Is that the only way? And we discussed about violence and what that means. And eventually, after one semester, he came back to me and told me, I've thought about it, and I think I don't need the gun. And last week he called me. He's in the Nuba Mountains, launching a non-violent institute to bring his friends to teach them about non-violence. And he has already got a sponsor for that project. I was very happy. The other one is of a young man also who told me that he was told never to help as a boy at home. His sister should cook, wash the dishes, do everything, because as a boy he has to be the man in the house. Yeah, as we say in Kenya, he has to roll for the women to come along. And he said, my sister asked me to do the housework, but I said, why should I? My father doesn't do it. My other brothers don't do it. Why should I? So he was at the meeting, and then he went back home. And he was sharing that when he went back home, he called his sister and said, can we sit together and discuss about this? I've realized to be a man does not mean, to leave all the work to you. So they sat together, and he said that from now on, we share the chores together. We share the work together. And it may look a very small thing, but in Africa, it's huge because that is part of the culture of violence. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sister Wamuyu. You just remind me that religious sisters and nuns are often the movers and the shakers, and they do so much to advance change, and they get the work done. And so appreciated you taking us on that journey and the stories. And I appreciated your mom's admonition before you open the gate, open your heart. And you also talked about the structural and the cultural violence and how it can become a norm. and you work at so many different levels, the gender violence, the interpersonal, and you're training sisters who go on to train thousands and thousands of people in active nonviolence. So thank you for all the work you do. And last but not least, Cardinal McElroy. I've really, one of the highlights for being part of this journey in the Catholic nonviolence movement has been getting to know you over these past several years and meeting you in Rome in 2016. And we've had the great opportunity to cross paths on different occasions. And I so admire your work. You're a scholar, you're a theologian, and you're a practitioner. And you know, you've done a lot of writing on nonviolence and just peace, but one thing that you've written really stood out for me. You wrote that the need to fundamentally renew and prioritize the claim of nonviolent action as the central tenet of Catholic teaching on war and peace is preeminent. We need to make this shift. And you know, your statement very much reflects what we heard from Pope Francis in his 2017 World Day of Peace address called Nonviolence, a Style of Politics for Peace, when he called for a reinvigorated focus on developing and implementing nonviolent approaches to transforming conflict. Nonviolent resistance, unarmed civilian protection, trauma healing, conflict resolution, mediation, the full range of tools. So Cardinal McElroy, why now, and what does the centering of nonviolent action look like in practice?
Well, I think the heart of this lies in what Pope Francis gave us in Fratelli Tutti. When we look at that, he asks a very penetrating question. What does it mean to love your brother or sister in the way Christ calls us to? And he has that very moving reflection. Remember, he uses the parable of the Good Samaritan, in which he places the reader in each position. You know, first is the man coming down the road who's beaten, then is the Levite, and then the priest, and then the robbers, and the Samaritan. So that in a rotating way, we see from each perspective what evil is being confronted and what evil is unfolding and what ignoring that evil leads to and passing on by. And the question that the Pope directly brings that's relevant to us today is, how can I have that same love in the context of war and armed conflict? What does that demand of us all? And he concludes, rightly so and powerfully so, it cannot demand that we participate in warfare and place armed conflict as the central reality of how conflict is handled in a major way in our world. And in a way, when we read that, and so many people comment, that's a dream. It is a dream. And as we gather for this synod, Pope Francis said to us, we must all become dreamers of dreams and seers of visions. But this dream is so much better than the nightmares we are living through now in these present days, when armed conflict, internally and externally, is destroying people's lives and cultures and economies and the connections among people and causing terrible destruction. The reason I think this institute is particularly important is Pope Francis puts that dream before us. And I know that is the foundation for all this institute is going to do. That's the centering piece. But there are other elements which are also important. And that is, how do we make this dream real? Now, I have to say, Maria was essential to my conversion on this issue because I heard her, I forget, 10 years ago, maybe in San Diego, on this question. And when I read her work and beyond that, it struck me that the belief and the action of active nonviolence really not only can stop conflict, but has so much superiority to the effects it brings in terms of lasting peace and reconciliation among people. And that is the real reason why active nonviolence, I think, should be, as Jesus wanted it to be, practiced in our world and central in our church's teaching on war and peace and conflict of all kinds. In the United States in the mid-'80s, we had a very important pastoral letter on war and peace. And in it, in the introductory section, it speaks about the three historic positions of Catholic teaching on war and peace. The first one was the Crusades, okay? That didn't get a lot of mention. Second was pacifism. That didn't get a lot of mention either. And the third then was the just war tradition. And in a very real way, it has struck me ever since then, the just war tradition is in possession in Catholic theology as the central prism through which we think, or at least we teach in so many levels, we are to pursue justice in times of conflict. And it's my strong belief and hope that we can move that to where active nonviolence is the centerpiece. It's not that the just war tradition will cease to exist or cease to have some relevance, but it is that the central reality of Catholic teaching on war and peace will be focused on nonviolence first, and in a sustained way, not merely a secondary way or a, well, we'll give it a try and then we move to armed conflict. But that it truly is the centerpiece. And I know that is really what this institute is seeking to do, seeking to find ways to make that practical and real and help people to understand it leads to a better world and a better way of life. And it avoids tremendous damage to people's lives and their cultures and their societies. And so I believe that's at the core of what the Institute seeks to do. Another thing that I'm very pleased about is that it can help and will help to address what is a great problem in how war and peace are analyzed in the cultures I live in. And that is, there is great ignoring of the conflict as they exist in the global south. The wars in the north get the attention. And that's a bad thing for two reasons. One is it is so unjust. But the second is many of the conflicts in the global south can be most instructive to us on how we begin to move toward nonviolence that we can utilize in the global north wars too. So that I think is a particularly important part of the perspective of this institute, and I will believe it will always be sustained. And the third reality I would just point to is this. I went to a symposium about 3 weeks ago in Los Alamos, New Mexico. Archbishop Wester there has done a lot of work on the nuclear question. And it was a conference that brought together nuclear scientists, policymakers of all the recent administrations in the United States, theologians and ethicists. And it was a bleak meeting because the conclusion was we're in a moment now, for a variety of geopolitical reasons, where progress cannot be made. And yet we're coming into a world in which there are active conflicts between nuclear powers, and nuclear weapons are being used, not detonated, but being used as leverage. And we're now in a conflict between Iran and Israel. You know, so I believe the assertion of this institute and Working for Peace will be that we cannot simply exist, that this is not a propitious time, that we have to make it a propitious time. So for all these three reasons, I'm delighted for this day, and I think this is a moment of grace, and that we are dreaming a dream, but it's the dream of Christ, and that we have to make that dream more of a reality. And so all those who will come together to dream and to implement and to share their experiences where nonviolence has worked, where there were good turns and wrong turns, and learn from it all. And most of all, if we can bring to our people in general the recognition that nonviolence can work. That's, I think, a big obstacle, at least in my own country and those I speak with most. They do not believe it can be effective, that it is simply a dream without a reality to it. What we have to say is it is the dream which has more reality to it, and make that come about. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cardinal McElroy, and that was a perfect segue, focusing on the dream with the reality part, and thank you for sharing that. And all your, the emphasis on how we can address war and peace, how we can analyze it more effectively, place a spotlight on the global South. And I can just say from the US perspective, there's been a lot of interest in learning from around the world about how to strengthen our democracy, how to address authoritarianism. And a lot of the lessons that we're learning are from the global South. And we are talking with activists, from places like the Gambia, from South Africa, in addition to Europe. And so there's huge learning. Nicaragua, Venezuela, there's a global conversation about how to actively challenge injustices using nonviolent means. So thank you for that, Cardinal McElroy. And, you mentioned, the need to bring the reality of nonviolence and how it can be effective and how it can make strategic sense, and being able to make that case powerfully to the world. And this connects very, very much to the work that I've been doing for the past 25 years or so. So I've been trying to better understand when and why ordinary people who are facing the worst forms of oppression, violence, tyranny, how and when they're able to advance human rights, human dignity, freedom, self-determination, using active nonviolent means, using tactics that we're all in this room are familiar with: the protests, the marches, the vigils, strikes, boycotts, civil disobedience, and how they can use these tactics effectively to bring about change. And, I've often faced, some misconceptions about this phenomenon. The idea that nonviolent action is somehow weak and passive, that it's a form of conflict avoidance, that it's the passive receipt of injustice as opposed to the active prosecution of conflict to be able to challenge injustices, that somehow the opponent needs to be humane and civilized or be able to be morally persuaded in order for nonviolent action and nonviolent resistance to work. And so, I would often be hearing these critiques about nonviolence, and that, maybe it can work here and there, but how effective has it actually been in the most difficult contexts where unarmed civilians are facing militarily superior opponents who are more than willing and able to use violence? So my colleague, another political scientist, a brilliant political scientist, Erica Chenoweth, and I spent years trying to understand this question. And we studied hundreds of major violent and nonviolent campaigns that challenged brutal, often brutal regimes and foreign military occupations. And we asked the question, which form of resistance, armed struggle or nonviolent resistance, has ultimately been more effective at achieving major goals? And which, as Cardinal McElroy pointed out, has been more conducive to sustained peace and democratization. So the long story short, since this is only a few minutes, is to say that the nonviolent resistance campaigns succeeded about twice as often as the armed insurgencies. They succeeded about 51% of the time compared to 26% of the time for armed struggle. And we also found that there was a significant correlation between major nonviolent campaigns and democratic consolidation and civil peace. So there were campaigns that we studied that achieved success. They toppled dictators, for example, but they almost never resulted in societies that were more peaceful and more democratic. Rather, they were more likely to result in societies where one repressive regime was replaced by another tyrannical regime. And so, so not only are there the short-term effects of, yes, nonviolent resistance can work. And I should say, I wrote my dissertation, 2 of my case studies were on the first Palestinian Intifada. I studied the role of nonviolent resistance in challenging the Israeli occupation in the late 80s and early 90s. And I also looked at East Timor, how the East Timorese used active nonviolent resistance. The Catholic Church was so actively involved in challenging the Indonesian occupation and genocide in that country. And, you know, the reason that the nonviolent resistance campaigns were more successful, we found, is that they tend to attract much greater levels of participation. So anyone can participate in nonviolent resistance. Young, old, men, women, rich, poor, workers, professionals, because there are so many different ways to get involved in nonviolent resistance, from, like, you know, more symbolic protest to more confrontational direct action. And when you have lots of people involved in nonviolent resistance, that makes it harder for the regime to get away with violence, and it makes it more powerful to strip away the sources of power that aggressors need to continue to wage war and aggression. And so, you know, so that was kind of the work for a long time, was being able to kind of make the empirical case for nonviolent resistance. But I should note that there's a somewhat worrisome trend happening globally, which is that nonviolent resistance over the past decade has become less successful than it was decades ago. And, you know, we think that this has to do with the level of learning between authoritarian regimes. They're swapping notes. There is such a thing as an authoritarian playbook. There are, you know, mass surveillance technologies. Social media tends to encourage fast mobilization, but it's less good at relational organizing, the slow organizing. So, you know, so even though there's been this decline in efficacy in nonviolent campaigns, I think that's also an invitation to all of us to focus on greater investment in this method of struggle and in all nonviolent approaches and interventions. I'm talking about nonviolent resistance today, but there's so much good research on the role of unarmed civilian protection in protecting civilians in Colombia, the Philippines, other places, the role of community mediation in bringing sides together and resolving disputes. There's so much tremendous research on when and why these nonviolent interventions are successful, yet we don't talk about them as much. And the bar seems so high for nonviolent solutions. Well, it didn't work, so we need to try violence and armed struggle. But what if we were able to make more of the case that, yes, these alternatives can work, they have been effective? And this is where I think the Catholic Church in this moment can make such a profound difference. You know, and there's also, I should note, really good research on the roles played by religious actors and institutions in nonviolent campaigns around the world. So my former colleagues at the U.S. Institute of Peace have developed a whole new data set on religion and nonviolent action to shed light on how religious symbols, slogans, institutions, actors are in the front lines of nonviolent movements around the world. So I think, you know, there is this great need to uplift and amplify these successes and these learnings. And so I often think to myself, imagine if in bilateral and multilateral diplomatic settings, Catholic Church leaders were consistently articulating the strategic logic of nonviolent solutions and the power of these methods that's backed by evidence and lived realities. What if the church and their various media outlets join forces with news sources like Waging Nonviolence and Nonviolence News to amplify the story of nonviolent movements and activists and organizers in countries around the world? What if Catholic universities centered trainings and teachings in active nonviolence and were given the resources to be able to do this type of work and to scale it? What if religious leaders were given the support and wherewithal to integrate active nonviolence and just peace in lay formation, religious training, homilies, sermons, so that at all levels, the training and the teaching about nonviolence was centered? And what if those who are on the front lines of active nonviolent movements around the world trying to transform violent conflict, like the people on this stage, were actually resourced and supported to do the work that they were doing? What if? I mean, I think that is the dream that we spoke about here. And I see that this new Catholic Institute for Nonviolence can be part of the infrastructure, because you need infrastructure, right? To sustain movements, to be able to bring people, resources, research together. What if this institute could be the place where the best research, the best learning across borders were concentrated, where people could be inspired by one another, where the spirit of global solidarity could blossom as people learn from each other how to resist violence and repression using active nonviolent means. So I think that is a bit of the dream behind this new Catholic Institute for Nonviolence. And with that, Marie, I think we're going to open up to you all to have a bit of a conversation. I think there's a bit of time for some questions if we have the mics available. So, so who maybe wants to kick us off and offer a question or a comment? Thank you.
Very good.
Please, go ahead, Marie.
You have a microphone? You do, yes.
Austin Ivory, thank you very much for your presentation. I was very interested by Cardinal Macro's observation that while not dismissing just war, we move non-violence to the centre of the Church's proclamation. What Pope Francis often says, and he's just said it now coming back from Belgium, is that all war is immoral. And I just wonder whether that's the starting point for the, if you like, the reframing of how the two positions can relate to each other. I hope am I clear?
Yes, I think it's clear, and I think that's at the root of it, in the sense. Some years ago, I took a sabbatical. I was a pastor, and studied war and peace and ethics of it in 23 different religions. And fundamentally, the starting point for all of them, there were a couple of exceptions, was war is morally wrong. That's the first presumption. And so I think that's what Pope Francis is saying. War is morally wrong. Then where do you go from there, and how do you really? I think we have to relativize the just war theory, not toss it out entirely, but give it a different position than it's had. And it was just, I was thinking through it just now when Maria was talking. In part of just war theory is last resort. Okay, I wonder if we shouldn't have that nonviolent action is first resort. That it plants it at the center, and that, granted, it's not going to deal with every situation, but I think those it doesn't should be emergency and rare situations. And to get there, I think we have to understand, first of all, that's where the gospel compels us, first of all. And secondly, a lot can be done through active nonviolence and should be done with greater lasting effects. And thirdly, we have to convince people of that. There has to be a conversion. Because I would say among my own people, who are not warlike people, but they would have to be convinced that active nonviolence is effective in many of these contexts that we're talking about. So that I hope the Institute will be helpful on that too.
Thank you. Other questions?
So good evening. I appreciate this new initiative. And just I want to add a point, namely, this week is going to be Mahatma Gandhi's birthday, 2nd of October. It is declared as the International Nonviolence Day. And 4th of October is the Feast of St. Francis. So these people have shown us a very creative way, engaging religions. So when you say a new type of spirituality, so I hope that that dimension of engaging religions at a level of spirituality would help us. That is not reflected in this. That's why just, a proposal.
Thank you for that. Admonition and for reminding us about the upcoming International Day of Nonviolence, which it's always important, I think, to use these international days to uplift and amplify the great work that's being done around the world on these issues. So thank you for centering that. Any other questions? Because I did, there's not one immediately. I did have kind of a question for our, we're waiting for the mic.
Posso parlare in italiano? Sì. Penso che un problema grosso, importante, sia quello di vedere se la dottrina attuale della Chiesa Cattolica è in linea con la non violenza attiva. Ecco, attualmente, con riferimento alle guerre, la posizione certamente in ambito cristiano, anche in ambito cristiano, non è una, talvolta in alcune confessioni, alcune denominazioni non accettabili, ecco, richiamano il concetto di guerra giusta. Ma la Chiesa Cattolica ha ormai superato questa posizione relativa alla guerra giusta. Però superare la posizione della guerra giusta, predicare la pace, impegnarsi per la pace, dire che la guerra è morale, dire tutto quello che si vuole, non è ancora la non violenza attiva. Non è ancora la non violenza attiva, perché la non violenza attiva è quella proprio di Gandhi, che non era certamente cristiano, non era né cattolico né cristiano, ma e si può dire che questo detto apostolo proprio della non violenza è proprio lui. Io sono avvicinato al Pax Christi, ma mi rendo conto di quanto è arduo questo compito. Attualmente la dottrina della Chiesa Cattolica è nel senso di ripudiare la guerra. La guerra non è mai giusta, ma di ammettere la legittima difesa. Ammettere la legittima difesa significa che se tu sei aggredito puoi rispondere all'aggressione, a determinate condizioni naturalmente. Le condizioni sono alle volte molto pesanti, ma in sostanza si tratta di questo. La legittima difesa è consentita quando non si provoca un male ancora maggiore. Quindi la non violenza attiva, la non violenza assoluta, significa che se c'è in poche parole, una pistola davanti a te, tu devi accettare di morire.
Grazie.
Questa è una violenza. Allora la mia domanda è, sapendo che in questo momento il Santo Padre Francesco non ha ritenuto ancora di pronunciarti su questo punto,
Grazie.
inviando successivamente. Come, qual è
Sir, we're just going to have someone to translate the part of your question so that we can address it as the panel. Would someone be able to?
Self-defense. Yeah, more self-defense.
Okay.
Yeah, more self.
Want me to read?
Somebody's attacking the self-defense.
Yes, I think on the question of individual level self-defense, what you're talking about, hopefully people would take, even if being attacked by a gun, would take some steps to de-escalate it. But if they can't, you're correct in that. The questions on these conflicts, though, in terms of war and peace, and the problem, I think, with just war tradition as it exists now, when it originally was born, it existed in a Christian culture which had a variety of reinforcements to it. For example, you could not fight on a holy day, and there was something like 100 holy days a year. So, and you couldn't do a certain. It was meant to put a break on war, to give pauses. Do you remember how they used to have like the Tet truce at Christmas and the Christmas tree? And it's to allow war to end. That's part of our problem. People get into it and they can't end it. The tradition as it existed in its prime had many of these cultural supports. My concern about the just war tradition as it's practiced now, not as it's enunciated, is that all of the conditions are merely looked on by many in many decision-making roles and in political decisions as checkoffs that you do to say, I've done that now I can go to the next step, rather than full-bodied moral restraints, I think, is which they were visioned. That would be my major concern with how it is now. And I'm not saying the just war tradition has no role now, but it has become devaluated as a moral instrument because of how it's interpreted and used in the current day, I believe.
Thank you, and first, thank you all for your words and for your work and just the reminder of what some of the best of what the Catholic Church has to offer. My question is, given that we know that women disproportionately experience the effects of war and violence, and also play critical roles in nonviolent activism and in peacemaking movements, what steps do you think the church could take to become a stronger voice and a more credible witness to that element of nonviolence, given the current role of women in the church and the limitations on their leadership and decision-making within the church? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. So how to lift up the work and the voices of women in nonviolent action and peace building. Colonel Bo or Mr. Wamuyu?
So, thank you for that question. I think it's a question that we should all be thinking about. I believe the first thing to do is for the church to model that, to make it a more circular church that is engaging. We may need to deconstruct the pyramid, that style of a pyramid where the women are at the base and the men are at the top. So for me, it's how do we deconstruct this in the church itself? Because if we don't model a circular church, that is a church that is inclusive at all levels, then I think that will remain a dream. So the church needs to make statements for women by first embracing at all levels, and of course educating. We need to look at the catechism first of all, how does that embrace women? You know, in our teachings, even in the families, in the schools, and across board, how do we bring, you know, this whole issue of gender equality, gender inclusiveness? How does it play out? It's not what we say. We can say we want women and men to be equal, but how is it in practice? And I know whenever we talk about that, people straight away think of women wants to be priests, that's not the point. I think we need to understand what are the narratives that women are talking about, because sometimes we can narrow it to just a debate and miss the point. The point is that we need to be inclusive, even in our language. I know sometimes people say, what does it matter if you say a he or a she? Language is key. The power of the word is very, very important. So we need to start there. Even it may mean changing even our books, our catechism, our prayer book. So for me, it's a whole, we have to start first by modeling that. And that is quite, it's a challenge. But I know when we do that, then it will translate in other spaces.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Sister Wamuyu. And just to say briefly, there's a lot of research that shows that women's active leadership in nonviolent campaigns is strongly correlated with their success. So women's active role and support for them in the front lines is really, really important. We're about to close and head out and go to a reception where we hope to continue this conversation. But before we do, I just wanted to turn one last time to the panel and invite you to offer, if you have one kind of hope for this new Catholic Institute for Nonviolence, or one thing that you would want it to really focus on, what would that one thing be? And if you can just speak in a very short period of time, that would be great. Sister Wamuyu, you want to start, and we'll make our way this way.
Yes, I want it to be a space for equal voices, that everybody can speak. What sometimes in Africa we talk a palaver, where everybody matters and can give a voice. That's what I would like to see.
And I think my hope would be that the Institute might advance the question of how do we bring this message to people in general of nonviolence and active nonviolence and the real possibilities and vigor of it.
I would accept all the practical actions that are taking place, but also I would like also to suggest what Pope Francis is telling, what we human beings are trying to solve, trying to gain peace with our weapons and our aggressions, but sometimes we forget there is somebody above that could really help us, so that we need also to insist on prayer also. What we human beings cannot do, the one that is above us has the capacity to do that. So prayer also should be included in our actions.
Thank you. And I would just offer that I hope that the new institute can offer a space, a forum, and kind of the infrastructure to provide sacred fuel to the fire of movements for rights, freedoms, and democracy around the world. So that would be my hope. And I think with that, Mark, we're having to say goodbye.
Thank you very much. An applause for them, for all reflections, goodwills. Thank you, Maria, Cardinal Bow, Cardinal McElroy, Sister Wamuyu. Now I invite you with the beautiful music by Lorenzo to stand up for 10 minutes at most as we prepare to honor the families, the Parent Circle Family Forum. So please stand up, and then for some few minutes, please, because we are on time. Thank you very much.
you down before you can call him a man. Yes, how many seas must one dove sail before she slips in the sand? Yes, how many times must the cannonballs fly before they're forever banned? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. How many years can a mountain exist before it washed to the sea? Yes, how many seas?
mobilizing against nuclear issues, pro-justice. So she shared 2 years ago her testimony about how she was converted by these people working hard in demonstrating how unjust is the world, how unjust is the business for nuclear issues, how unjust is the way that we are producing weapons. And now she's the head of the UN Pax Christi International representative of 8 people working for peace building and advocacy at the UN level. There are other representatives in Strasbourg, in Paris, in Vienna, and Geneva. So thank you, Mary. Mary is a board member, and she will introduce you the Cardinal Alfring Peace Fund. For you to be aware that every year there's a Peace Award, and this year we will be honoring the Parent Circle Family Forum. Thank you very much.
Gracias, Martínez. The Pax Christi International Peace Award, first introduced in 1988 and funded by the Cardinal Bernardus Alfring Peace Fund, honors remarkable individuals and organizations working for peace, justice, and nonviolence around the world. The award reflects the belief that meaningful peace is built through the efforts of local communities. While many recipients of the award operate at the grassroots level, their work often has a profound impact on broader peace processes. The award acknowledges the vital role of groups and individuals addressing such issues as war, human rights violations, and systemic injustice. The Pax Christi International Peace Award also serves as a form of solidarity with those working in dangerous and difficult circumstances. By bringing international recognition to their work, it helps amplify their voices and draw attention to often overlooked peace-building initiatives. Recipients of the Peace Award come from diverse backgrounds, ranging from human rights activists and religious leaders to community organizers and civil society groups. Over the decades, the award has honored individuals and organizations from all over the world, raising up and reinforcing the global movement for peace, justice, and nonviolence. We gather now in person to recognize the remarkable and essential work of the Parents Circle Families Forum, an organization dedicated steadfastly to promoting peace in the face of countless challenges and obstacles. Their mission to unite Israelis and Palestinians is crucial, highlighting their shared humanity and suffering, and offering a path to healing. It is my pleasure now to invite Anne Farr, former Pax Christi International board member and former chair of Pax Christi England and Wales, representing the Pax Christi International Working Group for a Just Peace in Israel and Palestine, who will now acknowledge the remarkable work of our sisters and brothers of the Parents Circle Families Forum. Anne?
Thank you, Mary. When the forum was chosen for the award, our hope was that we would meet with them in the Holy Land and we would be able to present it to them in person. However, events overtook our plans, and we held a webinar in December to honor their work. But we're delighted that we can now have Bassem and Salwa Aramin with us here in person today. Yuval Rahamin was supposed to come with us, to be with us here today as well. But unfortunately, the unimaginable difficulties that we've seen in Lebanon and throughout Palestine, the West Bank and Gaza, the whole of the system is broken. Transport is very difficult, and it was not possible for him to come to be with us in person today. But he will be with us online, and we're very pleased about that. Having lived and worked in Palestine and Israel on the World Council of Churches program as an ecumenical accompanier, and working alongside our partners, our Pax Christi partners in Palestine, I've seen and heard how valued the work of the Parent Circle is. The Parent Circle is a joint Israeli-Palestinian organization of over 700 families, all of whom have lost an immediate family member in the ongoing conflict. They embody courage by transforming deep personal grief into compassion and understanding. In their work in homes, workplaces, communities, and with young people, they tell their personal stories of bereavement and explain their choice to engage in dialogue instead of revenge. They work at getting to know the other in the steps towards reconciliation between peoples. And at the heart of this is what they call listening from the heart, where they offer communities the chance to talk about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict from a human perspective. The organization is committed to promoting peace despite countless obstacles, and they recognize the shared humanity and suffering of both Palestinians and Israelis equally, offering a path towards healing. Their work shows that even in the face of profound loss, reconciliation is possible, proving that peace can emerge from the darkest moments of conflict. In the present context of increasingly unimaginable violence, when we see the daily violations of international law and the denial of human rights, against the background of the illegal occupation of Palestine and the ongoing genocide in Gaza. The message of peace, cooperation, and non-violence that the Parent Circle promotes has never been more urgent. Their example must be shared widely in schools, communities, and among leaders to inspire a sustainable path towards peace. The Parent Circle has expressed their deepest and heartfelt condemnation on the ongoing violence in the region. And I want to quote directly from them. They say, "It is a time of great sorrow, knowing that countless families now bear the burden of emptiness in their hearts and the heavy weight of grief due to the tragic loss of their loved ones. The toll of violence is not just counted in numbers, it is measured in the shattered dreams, the untapped potential, and the irreplaceable bonds severed by these horrifying actions. The victims, both seen and unseen, deserve our unwavering support and empathy as they grapple with the profound trauma inflicted upon them." And they continue, "It is an undeniable truth that the time has come to change this situation. This region has endured too much pain, too much bloodshed, and too many tears. It is a moment for all parties involved to reflect on the senselessness of this continued conflict and to recognize the shared humanity that binds us all. Let us remember that violence begets violence, and the only way forward is through peaceful dialogue, diplomacy, and a commitment to finding common good. It's a call to action for leaders, communities, and individuals alike to seek solutions that prioritize reconciliation, justice, and lasting peace. As we hear those words from those who have suffered all that they have suffered, we are reminded that Opus Solidaritatis Pax, peace through solidarity, tells us that we must stand with the victims of violence, injustice, and inhumanity. The protection of human dignity should be the foundation of all political and religious action in the quest for peace. Awareness alone is not enough. We must continue to be informed, to monitor developments in the Holy Land, and to take tangible action, whether through lighting a candle for peace, or advocating for policy changes. It is crucial that we urge national and international leaders to take meaningful steps towards justice. Active hope urges us not only to recognize the injustices of the world, but to actively work together to address them. Hope is not passive. It requires action, dialogue, and respect to build bridges of understanding and to seek truth amid conflict. Supporting civil society organizations that work tirelessly to build these bridges is especially important in these most difficult times. It remains critical for the peace process. Jean Zaro, the Palestinian Quaker theologian, has said, "We cannot live a day without saying yes or no to death or to life, to war or to peace. The choice is ours. There is no compromise in this matter. To postpone or evade the decision is to decide. To hide is to decide. To compromise is to decide. There is no escape. This is our choice." The Parents Circle Family Forum have made their choice. They choose humanity, to listen, to share stories, to speak out. And they show the patience and nurturing of the core human values of love, justice, respect, and compassion, all of which are needed in the gradual process of building lasting peace. They demonstrate that by embodying these values, the dream of a non-violent world can move from being an ideal to becoming a reality, step by step, through collective effort. In choosing them to receive the Pax Christi International Peace Award, we too make our choice, and we stand in solidarity with them and their work. And we're now privileged to invite the representatives of the Family Forum. Bassam, who is the International Relations Director, is going to come to present their work. And I hope that we will also have Yuval, the CEO, online. I'm hoping it will come. A video first. Thank you. Right. Ah, Yuval. So maybe we should move aside. welcome Yuval.
Thank you very much.
And of course to Bassam. And Salwa is there in the front.
It would be first the video and then to present by them the Parent Circle Families Forum. That's the idea? Not the video? Okay, so right. Please go ahead with the dialogue.
Communication is very important. Yeah.
Okay, should I start now?
Yeah, please, Yuval.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me tonight. Really sorry I cannot be with you in person for this ceremony. You know that the violent cycle now is changing all our routines and all our possibilities. So I had to make a choice to stay home. But I cannot skip this opportunity to speak with you tonight. I lost my father when I was 8 years old in a war, in the '67 war. And I made up my mind as a kid to revenge the death of my father. It seems for many people the natural choice when you lose somebody in a violent action. But I never done it. I never did it. Instead, I took a journey in my life where I understood that revenge will take me nowhere, will give me nothing, and will only continue the cycle of death and pain and hate. So at the age of 50, I made a choice. I made a choice to dedicate my time to use my pain, to use my loss, to demonstrate that this is not the only choice that one can make. There's another choice, to choose peace, to reach out to the one that is used to be my enemy, but has also lost and pain, and to find a way that our joint loss and pain will lead a way to everybody to understand that peace and reconciliation is the only way. So ever since this decision, I'm making every necessary step and I take every action to join with my colleagues, with my Israeli colleagues and my Palestinian colleagues, and to demonstrate to our communities that this is not just possible, it is necessary that we join hands. And if we do it, if we can do it, if Bassam that sits now in the room and me can shake hands and say, okay, we have lost our loved ones. We are never going to stop aching for this loss, but we can make sure we can do an effort that this can be maybe the last one, that maybe others will not have to suffer this kind of loss. So this organization is now unfortunately growing. And in this past year, dozens have joined us, people who lost family members in Gaza, in Israel, and they all understand that revenge is not the way, that we must demonstrate to our communities that are immersed in pain and in hate and in fear. We must demonstrate that this is really possible. The war that is going now in Israel all over is in Palestine is not started a year ago. It started 100 years ago, and it's ongoing. Even when there's no visible violence and bombings, the war is there. Unless there's a peace, there's a war. And even if there's no violence every day people are getting ready for the wars. We must replace that situation with peace, with agreements, with a reconciliation process that will bring Israelis and Palestinians together to understand that they share this land and they have to live on it together. They cannot just continue to die for the name, in the name of this land and on the love of this land that everybody share. So we cannot get together during this year because of the war, but we do every possible effort to continue our communication, to do it online, to share it with the public on Palestine and in Israel and everywhere else in the world, in order to be ready for the day after, for the long and painful healing process that will help us rebuild all the bridges that we had so with so much effort for so many years that are now closed. We will have to reconstruct them and reopen them and to start our work again so that everybody else can enjoy it and can share this bridge and can go use those bridges that we have built. I would not go and describe all the projects we are doing. We do all the year, for many years, for 30 years, projects with kids, with youth, with women, with adults, with students, inside Palestine and inside Israel and cross-border and everywhere on the planet. You can watch a lot of our content through our website. I want to thank Pax Christi for choosing us. I think this is a selection, a choice that demonstrates how committed you are to peace, not just in this region, but anywhere else. I believe that once we have peace here in the Holy Land, this will reflect to the entire world. This will be the beginning of a world peace, because everybody on the world looks on us and see our conflict and see the Holy Land that is soaked with blood for so many years, and everybody hopes and prays and to the end of this conflict. And thank you for choosing, and thank you for praying with us. Let's continue to pray for peace in this land, for Jewish, Muslims, Christians, all religions, all genders. People must have peace, and people must have the opportunity to live without fear and without hatred. So thank you very much. God bless you.
Did Yuval leave? No. Yuval, you are with us?
Where's he gone?
No, it's okay. Good evening. Good evening. In fact, I want...
A moment. If Yuval is still there, we'd like to invite him to stay with us. Yes. Please, if we could have it. They'll reconnect. Thank you very much.
Yeah, in fact, it's the first time in my life, 55 years, that the Israeli cannot travel outside and I can go easily. It's a paradox. It's unbelievable. So the people understand that I am the occupier. I need to make his life more easy. In spite, I am very happy, of course, to be with him. And I want to join Yuval by thanking Pax Christi for choosing the Parent Circle for this international recognition to our efforts, and thank you for this initiative, which is very important, especially from the Catholic world. And this reminds me, less than a month ago, I met the Pope, and I said to him, Baba, I wish you are the President of United States of America. So he smiled and he said, I'm not sure if it will be a blessing. Everyone talk about nonviolence. I don't talk about nonviolence. I practice nonviolence. This is the difference. I didn't study it, I lived it under very brutal conditions. When I was 17 years old, I found myself in jail in a very difficult conditions. It's a very long 7 years, but through this process, I found myself that I need to create internal instruments to live with this occupier, to live with this jailer, to prove that I am a human being. I'm not a terrorist, I'm not a killer. I was a kid and I found myself as a fighter or a warrior in jail. You know, I'm not going to talk to you about 7 years in jail, but in general, they want to kill our humanity every moment because we are killers, we are terrorists, we are the bad guys for them, and we teach ourselves that they are not our example. We are not occupiers, we are freedom fighters. So we need to follow our own values, otherwise we will be like them. This is how we teach ourselves in jail. They never broke you, it's the opposite. You just become more determined to continue your way, your struggle against the occupation. In fact, in jail I watch a movie about the Holocaust. I don't know anything about the Holocaust. I know that someone called Hitler who killed 6 million Jewish people, but it's a big lie. And I don't know even from where is Hitler. In fact, I want to enjoy seeing this movie. When I saw it, I understand it's about Hitler and the Jews. And after a few minutes, I found myself crying, get sympathy with those innocent people. It was too much for me. I am a very simple terrorist. I born in a cave. I don't expect to see such atrocities. It's against the human nature for me. It's a long story, but I decide that I want to know more about this big lie. If it's really happened or it's just a movie, because I want to understand the brutal behavior of the Israeli soldiers when they come to my village when I was young. It's unbelievable. They are like killing machines. There is no difference between kids and women and ladies and teachers. So I say to myself, maybe those soldiers watch such a movie, and after that they come to my village, absolutely they will act in this way. And if it's happened to us, to the Palestinians, also maybe we will lose our humanity. It means at the age of 17, I have no idea what happened to the Palestinians back in 1948, because I never studied anything about it. So the result, after I get released from jail after 25 years, I have the chance to make my master's degree about the Holocaust in Bradford University in the UK. Then after that, I start to visit death camps in Germany. But it started as a tool, because I learned in jail, if you know your enemy, you can defeat him or you can kill him. If you only hate him, you will kill yourself. So I said, I want to kill my enemy, not myself, so I need to know more about my enemy. Then you understand that if you know more, you act much better. If you don't know, simply you don't know. Then I discovered that it's much, much better not to know, because you always agree with yourself. You are the chosen people, the best religion, the best language, the best food, the best coffee, like the Italians. And when you start to know something different, in Arabic we said, you start to suffer because you cannot keep silence. I have a very long story, but after I get released, of course, 1 year later, suddenly we have also agreement between PLO and Israel. It's unbelievable. The same ex-terrorists, killers, bad people, the barbarians, means the Palestinians, with the Israelis, they start to meet each other, the Israeli generals who arrest some of them 20, 15 years ago. What happened? They became partners for peace. It's an Israeli and American political decision. That's it. Nothing changed. The same killers with the same war criminals. It's a decision to make this agreement. So it gives us a sign that maybe through negotiations we can achieve such agreement. So like most of the Israelis and the Palestinians at that time, I support this agreement. A few months later, I met Senorita Salwa, and after 31 days, we get married. It's a very long love story. And she still survived until now. And sometimes I told her that I deserve compensations. And suddenly I have 6 kids, which is worse than the Israeli occupation. It's a lot of responsibility. But this occupation occupied my life. Our goal was to protect our kids, especially we have peace now. I will never allow to my son to go to the Israeli jails because he don't know, because he want to raise the flag like me. I think I have the experience and I know how to raise them up. In 2005, I was one of the co-founders of a group called Combatants for Peace, which is ex-Israeli soldiers and officers who refused to serve in Palestine or the occupied territories because they discovered that through their military service, they never served the security of Israel. They just create more hatred in the Palestinian side, which is true. And we discovered that this conflict cannot be solved in a military solution. And the evidence, more than 100 more. We did everything possible against each other. We used the armed struggle, which they call it violence or terrorism, whatever they call them. And until now, Israel is not safe and Palestine is not free. We need to change our way to achieve the same goal. We will never accept the Israeli occupation, even after 3,000 years from tonight. So we need to know how to live together all side by side. In fact, after 1 year, we create Combatants for Peace, and our slogan was what Nelson Mandela says. If you want to make peace with your enemy, you need to work with your enemy. Then your enemy become your partner. Then you discover that we don't need to love each other. We don't need even to like each other. But we need to respect each other. From the beginning, I said, you can enjoy hating me forever. In the end, you will have heart attack. So just respect me, my borders, my human right, my dignity, and I will respect yours, and you can enjoy hating me. This is how we start as partners. 2 years later, on the 16th of January 2007, an Israeli border police shot and killed my 10-year-old daughter, Abir. She was my 3rd child in the front of her school, from a distance of 15 to 20 meters, in her head from the back. Abir fell down, and 2 days later, she passed away in Hadassah Hospital, where she born. 2 hours later, I received more than 30 Israeli families who come to stay with me 3 days to pray for little Abir until she passed away. I know where I live, I promise you. I said from the beginning, we need to double our efforts to achieve peace, especially because I have another 5 kids. I want to protect them. Even before Abir died, she was in a very critical situation. If the worst happened, I wish my daughter will be the last victim between the Israelis and the Palestinians. I'm not going to give up. I will follow those killers in the court, even after 100 years. But unfortunately, the Israelis will close the file, and they will say, because lack of evidence. This is what I said. After 4.5 years, the Israeli Supreme Court decision was, the mother have the right to know the killer of her daughter, but because it's 4.5 years, and because lack of evidence, we close the file, word by word. In fact, I met the victim who killed my daughter after 3.5 years in the Israeli court in Jerusalem. And I said to him, you are not a hero, and you are not a warrior. You didn't kill the enemy or the terrorist. You just killed 10 years innocent girl. And if you are proud of what you did, you can enjoy your crime. I don't ask for revenge because I don't take revenge from victims. For me, you are not less victim than your victim. But in any day in your life, if you come to ask me to forgive you, always you will find me there. But it's not because of yourself at all. It's because of myself. In spite, I'm a Muslim, I'm an Arab, I'm a Palestinian, but I discovered that I love my daughter very much. And because I have another 5 kids, I don't want them to grow up as victims to you. In fact, 2 days later, I joined the Parents Circle Families Forum because I know them 2 years before. But in my worst dream, I don't want to join this amazing group. Now more than 700 families, Israelis and Palestinians, who lost their beloved one, we come together because we discover that we love our kids and our beloved ones. We stop saying that we will continue their way. It means we need to prepare our other kids to kill and to be killed in the name of revenge. I discovered that we kill our kids with our own hands, even without taking responsibility. We have the moral authority to raise up our voice and to say no more blood, no more killing. We need all of us to raise up our voice against the occupation. It's the Israeli military occupation since 75 years. Believe me, the occupation or the conflict didn't start in the 7th of October and didn't end in the 8th of October and didn't end with the assassination of Haniya or Sinwar or Hezbollah or they are managing the conflict. It doesn't work. As long as there are people under the occupation asked to be free, they will never feel free. Never. People who occupied another people will never feel free. And from between the river and the sea, everyone should be free, Israelis and the Palestinians. And the only way, by living side by side or together without occupation, without oppression. Otherwise, we will continue to sacrifice the blood of our kids to protect the holy stones of Jerusalem, and I am not sure if Jerusalem know who we are, if we are exist at all. The Hamas people who attacked on the 7th of October, remember, they were 10 to 12 years old kids back in 2014. What they are doing now? More than 50,000 people. They just invest in more hatred, in more revenge to prepare for the next 7th of October if we didn't end this conflict. How people stop killing each other. We talk here about justice. Without justice, there is no peace. We need to look for justice, and we are ready to look for more, to live together. My faith, it's not hope that we can live together, and it will be, we will do it. Always I said that the Palestinians didn't kill 6 million Israelis, and the Israelis didn't kill 6 million Palestinians yet. And there is a German ambassador in Tel Aviv, and there is an Israeli ambassador in Berlin, 4 years after 6 million victims. So we can do it. We only need a brave leader who take us towards the future and release us from the very painful past, because past is over. Thank you very much.
אני אושר, רכז חינוך חברתי בתיכון קריית שרת. מאוד מאוד קשה עם מי שאני, עם התחושות שלי, עם איך שאני תופס את עצמי, עם איך שאני תופס את המדינה, בכלל לחשוב להביא פורום כזה לתלמידים שלי.
אני לא חושב שאחד מאיתנו בכלל בבית ספר אי פעם בכלל הכיר פלסטיני, או דיבר עם אחד. תגיד, אני בכלל הופתעתי שהוא ידע לדבר עברית.
אני לקחתי את כל הכעס הזה, לקחתי את כל התסכול שיש, את כל הכאב שיש לי גם, ושמתי אותו במקום אחד. שמתי אותו בתוך הפורום המשפחות השכולות הפלסטין-ישראלי.
אנחנו מופיעים בפני התלמידים, ישראלי ופלסטיני. הוא איבד את האח שלו, אני איבדתי את הבנים שלי. כשהם רואים את זה, זה נותן להם תמונה אחרת על מה באמת המערכת היחסים צריכה להיות ויכולה להיות בין בני אדם.
אפילו אנשים שלא רוצים לדבר בדרך כלל בכיתה, הם היו כל כך מסוקרנים, שהם פשוט היו חייבים להשתתף. זה פשוט היה לדעתי ההרצאה אולי הכי מרתקת שהייתה לנו.
חד משמעית, אין פה ספק בכלל.
זה היה מאוד מעורב.
היה לי חשוב שפעם אחת יישב מולם פלסטיני, יוכלו לשאול אותו שאלות, והוא יוכל להגיב, והוא יוכל לשאול אותם שאלות בחזרה. וגם אם זה יעצבן אותם, וגם אם ירגישו שזה לא נכון, שזה לא מתאים עבורם, עדיין ייווצר כאן איזשהו שיח, והם יוכלו רגע גם לגבש לעצמם את הדעה שלהם.
בשנים האחרונות אנחנו שומעים הרבה על בתי ספר, על מורים, על הורים, שכל כך מתנגדים למפגשים האלה, ואני שואלת את עצמי, למה בדיוק הם מתנגדים? שהתלמידים יכירו במורכבות של המקום שאנחנו חיים בו, המקום הזה מורכב מאוד. זה לא שחור ולבן, זה לא טוב או רע. ומה שהפורום מביא, הוא מביא את המורכבות.
אם אתה רוצה לייצר סובלנות, אתה צריך לעשות סובלנות. ואם אתה רוצה לפתוח את התלמידים למגוון דעות, אתה לא צריך להגיד להם, הנה, יש לנו את עקרון הסובלנות והוא לבגרות. לא. אתה צריך להראות להם שאתה, בתור איש חינוך, שהם מאמינים בו, שהם סומכים עליו, שיש גם דעות אחרות ואתה פתוח להקשיב להם.
אני שילמתי את המחיר הכי כבד בעולם, ועדיין אני מאמין בשלום. וזה אני מספר לילדים שלי, וזה אני צריך גם לספר לכל הילדים היהודים הישראלים.
Sorry about that. I just want to welcome Bishop Mark Stanger and Sister Tarasia Wamuyo Wachira, the co-presidents of Pax Christi International, to present the award.
Salwa.
This precious Peace Award has been made by the indigenous people in the south of Colombia, my country, with all the hope for your work. So continue in working with the spirit and with the energy, although the difficult circumstances. So the prizes for the very inspiring and courageous stories of reconciliation amongst the peoples in the Holy Land. Pax Christi International Peace Award 2023 to the Parent Circle Families Forum, Rome, September 29th, 2024. Now, to close our ceremony, it is a humble way to say thank you for the hard work you are doing. We invite Bishop Mark to present a last blessing to all of us.
This?
Please stay there. Yeah.
Not this, no? Yes?
Yes.
Good.
Yeah. One step back. One step.
Blessing for recipients of Pax Christi Award, Parent Circle Family Forum. God of Peace, we thank you for Bassam, Salwa, Yuval, and all the members of Parent Circle Family Forum for their witness to dialogue in times of unimaginable violence. May their steadfast commitment to nonviolence inspire to end to war and end oppression. Bless them with your courage and strength to face each day. God of love, we thank you for Bassam, Salwa, Yuval, and all members of the Parents Circle Family Forum for their light that breaks through the shadows of hatred. May their friendship that transcends borders and boundaries be a path to unity for all people. Bless them with your compassion to always see with the eyes of their hearts, especially in the face of rejection. God of hope, we thank you for Bassam, Salwa, Yuval, and all members of the Parent Circle Family Forum for their unbroken belief that peace and justice will prevail. May their faith be unwavering in times for uncertainty. Bless them with faith that they are not alone in the struggle for an end to occupation and the beginning of reconciliation. We thank God of life. We thank you for Bassam, Salwa, Yuval, and all members of the Parents Circle of Family Forum. For in the face of this, they breathe life. May their work be sustained through immeasurable to challenges. Bless them with your abundant love that heals all wounds. Amen.
Yeah, thank you very much to all of you. We invite you to have some meals, to share, to great our honor Parent Circle families, and to speak about active nonviolence. And we invite you the Fridays launch meetings, workshops here at the Istituto Maria Bambina. So thank you very much for your presence.
Please. Just a moment. We will pray, ask the blessing of God of parents, of circle of family, but all the blessing of God for the Institute of Nonviolence of Pax Christi International.
Okay.
Blessing for launch of Catholic Nonviolence Institute. As we bring this celebration to a close, let us give thanks to God when makes all things possible. For the dream of peace, of the path of non-violence, let us give thanks to God. For all creation and the intricate web of life that teaches humans the way of healing and harmony, let us give thanks to God. For the mission of Pax Christi and the new Catholic Nonviolence Institute, which strive to bear witness to and spread the message of gospel peace and nonviolence as a spirituality, a way of life, and a global ethic, let us give thanks to God. For Pope Francis and the prophetic way he reaches out to the periphery in word and deed, giving us a model of non-violence and love, let us give thanks to God. For all gathered here and around the world who are united across borders and boundaries as we labor in the field of justice, let us give thanks to God. Loving God, we humbly ask for your blessing on the individuals and communities of Parent Circle, Family Forum, Pax Christi International, the Catholic Nonviolence Institute. May we always walk together in communion with you, each other, and all of creation in everlasting love and hope. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
A tiny information for those of you that use the headphones, please remember to bring them back. Take your ID with you, but just to bring them back. That's the most important thing. The ID is on you. And for those of the working group of Pax Christi International, if you can come here, we will take a picture together. Working group. Now you have to come. Thank you very much. For the picture. Thank you very much.
Powerful story.
It was for you. It was for you. I know.
What is that? I don't know if we get to show it. Oh, Marie.